The reply was sent. One word, no, floated silently into the vastness of space, carrying with it the hopes and fears of an entire planet. Back on Earth, the tension was palpable. People gathered in living rooms, streets, and public squares, glued to their screens as news anchors repeated the same phrase over and over. Humanity has said no. Some cheered, feeling a surge of pride at the boldness of the response. Others wept, terrified of what might come next. The uncertainty weighed heavily on everyone. In the United Nations headquarters, the mood was somber. Leaders from around the world had returned to their respective countries, leaving behind a small group of key figures to monitor the situation. Daniel Carter and Michelle Lewis remained at the center of it all. They sat in a dimly lit conference room surrounded by maps, charts, and blinking monitors displaying real-time data from satellites tracking the Council's ship. The massive vessel still loomed ominously in Earth's orbit, unmoving and silent. "What do you think they're doing up there?" Michelle asked, breaking the quiet. Her voice was calm, but her knuckles were white as she gripped the edge of the table. Daniel shrugged, his eyes fixed on the screen showing the Council's ship. "They're probably deciding how to respond. Maybe they didn't expect us to push back so hard." Michelle frowned. "That's what worries me. If they didn't expect this, they might see it as an insult. And if they feel insulted, they'll attack." Daniel finished for her. He leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "But we've already made our choice. Now we wait." Waiting was the hardest part. Every second felt like an eternity. Rumors began to spread across the globe. Some claimed the Council's silence meant they were preparing a devastating assault. Others believed they were impressed by humanity's courage and were reconsidering their demands. Neither theory could be proven, and the lack of information only fueled anxiety. Meanwhile, outside the walls of the UN building, the world was fracturing. Protests erupted in cities everywhere. In New York, thousands marched through Times Square, holding signs that read, "Stand strong and no surrender." In London, crowds chanted slogans demanding unity, but not everyone supported defiance. In Paris, demonstrators clashed with police, shouting that the government had doomed them all. Similar scenes played out across continents, dividing families, communities, and nations. Even within the halls of power, disagreements simmered. Military leaders urged immediate action, calling for the deployment of Earth's armed forces to prepare for battle. Scientists argued that humanity's best chance lay in diplomacy, suggesting they try to open negotiations with the Council. Economists warned of the financial collapse that would follow any prolonged conflict. Each faction presented its case, passionately, but none could agree on a unified strategy. Amid the chaos, Daniel and Michelle worked tirelessly to keep things together. They became the glue holding the fragile coalition intact. Daniel spent hours analyzing the Council's technology, searching for weaknesses or patterns that might give humanity an edge. He pored over schematics and equations, his mind racing with possibilities. Michelle, on the other hand, focused on maintaining morale. She met with world leaders, addressed the media, and visited troops stationed along Earth's borders. Her speeches were filled with hope and determination, reminding people why they had chosen to fight. Despite their efforts, cracks began to show. Supplies dwindled as panic buying swept through markets, factories producing weapons and defensive. Systems struggled to meet demand. Refugees fled major cities, fearing they would be the first targets if war broke out. Hospitals braced for casualties, stockpiling medicine and blood donations. The strain on resources was immense, and it seemed like every system was on the verge of collapse. Then, something unexpected happened. A message arrived, not from the Council, but from an unknown source. It came in the form of a faint signal picked up by one of Earth's deep space telescopes. At first, scientists dismissed it as interference, but when they decoded the transmission, they realized it was intentional. The message was brief and cryptic. "We are watching. Stay strong. No one knew who had sent it or what it meant. Was it a trick? A trap? Or perhaps another alien race observing the standoff between Earth and the Council? Daniel and Michelle debated whether to share the message with the public. On one hand, it could inspire hope, giving people the belief that they weren't entirely alone. On the other hand, it could cause more confusion and fear. Ultimately, they decided to keep it quiet, sharing the information only with top officials. As days passed, the Council's ship remained eerily still. No new messages came, no attacks were launched, and no reinforcements arrived. It was as though the Council had frozen time itself, leaving humanity suspended in a state of limbo. The waiting grew unbearable. People started losing sleep, obsessively, checking the news for updates. Conspiracy theories flourished online, ranging from claims that the Council had abandoned their mission to rumors of secret negotiations taking place behind closed doors. During this period, Daniel found himself questioning everything. He replayed the events leading up to the decision to send the word no, wondering if they had made the right call. Had they been too reckless? Too arrogant? What if the Council truly intended to destroy Earth, and humanity's defiance only hastened its doom? One evening, after another long day of work, Michelle joined him in the observation room overlooking the city. The lights below twinkled like stars, a stark contrast to the dark clouds hanging over humanity's future. She placed a hand on his shoulder, sensing his unease. "You look like you're carrying the weight of the world," she said softly. "I am," Daniel replied with a weak smile. "What if we messed up, Michelle? What if saying no was the wrong move?" Michelle sighed, leaning against the railing beside him. "There's no way to know for sure, but even if it was a mistake, it was a brave one. Sometimes, bravery is all we have." Daniel nodded slowly, letting her words sink in. "I just wish I could see the bigger picture, understand what the Council wants. Why now? Why us?" Michelle hesitated before answering. "Maybe it's not about what they want. Maybe it's about what we showed them. We stood up when everyone expected us to kneel. That kind of thing leaves an impression." Her words resonated with Daniel, offering a sliver of comfort. Perhaps humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its technology or military strength. It was its spirit, the ability to unite, to resist, to fight for something greater than survival. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to feel a flicker of hope. Back in the command center, preparations continued. Engineers worked around the clock to fortify Earth's defenses, while strategists devised contingency plans for every possible scenario. Schools conducted drills to prepare children for evacuation. Farmers rushed to harvest crops before fields were abandoned. Every aspect of life was touched by the looming threat, yet somehow humanity endured, and then, on the 5th day since sending the message, the Council finally responded. The galaxy was vast, a swirling canvas of stars and planets that stretched farther than anyone could imagine. Among these countless worlds, Earth was just one small speck, a pale blue dot floating in the endless void. For most of its existence, humanity had no idea it shared the universe with others. It wasn't until the first alien ships appeared in the skies above major cities that people realized they were not alone. At first, there was awe, excitement, and fear, but soon, reality set in. The universe was ruled by beings far more advanced than humans. These rulers called themselves the Intergalactic Council. They were an alliance of powerful alien species who governed much of the known galaxy. Their empire spanned thousands of light years, encompassing hundreds of civilizations. To them, humanity was insignificant, a primitive race still struggling to understand the basics of space travel. For years, the Council ignored Earth, considering it unworthy of attention. But as time passed, humanity grew stronger, faster than anyone expected. Within a century, Earth developed technology that rivaled some of the older members of the Council. This caught their notice, and not in a good way. One day, without warning, a massive starship descended into Earth's orbit. It dwarfed everything humanity had ever built. Its metallic surface gleamed under the sunlight, reflecting an eerie sense of power. The ship didn't attack or speak immediately. Instead, it simply hovered there, casting a shadow over half the planet. People watched, in stunned silence as news outlets broadcast live footage of the vessel. No one knew why it was here or what it wanted. Speculation ran wild. Some thought it was a peaceful visit. Others feared invasion. Then came the message. A deep, resonant voice boomed across every communication channel on Earth. It spoke in perfect English, though the tone was cold and mechanical. "Attention, inhabitants of Earth," it began. "You have been deemed worthy of joining the Intergalactic Council. However, your inclusion comes at a cost. You will provide tribute, a substantial portion of your resources, technology, and labor to demonstrate your loyalty and submission." The voice paused for dramatic effect before continuing. "Failure to comply will result in immediate annihilation. You have 48 hours to respond. Choose wisely." And then, just like that, the transmission ended. Silence followed. The sheer audacity of the demand left the entire world reeling. Tribute? Submission? These terms felt foreign to humanity, which had spent centuries fighting for freedom and independence. Now, faced with such an ultimatum, panic spread like wildfire. In Washington, D.C., leaders from around the globe gathered in emergency sessions. The United Nations building buzzed with activity as diplomats, scientists, and military officials debated their options. Everyone knew the stakes were unimaginably high. Agreeing to the Council's demands would mean losing control of Earth's future. Refusing could lead to catastrophic consequences. There was no easy answer. Among those, present was Daniel Carter, a physicist whose work on quantum mechanics had earned him recognition worldwide. Though he preferred solitude in his lab, Daniel had been summoned to offer insight into the Council's technology. He sat quietly at the back of the room, observing the chaos unfolding before him. His sharp eyes scanned the faces of the panicked delegates, searching for any sign of clarity amidst the confusion. Next to him was Michelle Lewis, a seasoned diplomat known for her calm demeanor and quick thinking. She had spent years negotiating peace treaties between warring nations, earning respect even from her harshest critics. Unlike Daniel, Michelle thrived in high-pressure situations. Her presence brought a sense of stability to the otherwise chaotic meeting. As arguments erupted around them, Daniel leaned toward Michelle and whispered, "We can't give in. If we do, we lose everything we've worked for. All our progress, our freedom. We might as well hand over the keys to our planet." Michelle nodded but replied cautiously, "I agree, but defiance could mean destruction. Do you think we're ready to fight them? Look at their ship. It's bigger than anything we've ever seen. What if they have weapons we can't even comprehend?" Daniel hesitated. He didn't have an answer. None of them did. Humanity's greatest achievements paled in comparison to the Council's technology. Still, something inside him refused to believe surrender was the only option. "There has to be another way," he said firmly. "Something that shows we won't back down but doesn't provoke outright war." Michelle raised an eyebrow. "What are you suggesting?" Daniel took a moment to gather his thoughts. Then, in a low voice, he said, "A single word. That's all we need to send. One carefully chosen word that conveys strength, determination, and unity. Something simple enough to make them pause, but bold enough to show we're not afraid." Michelle frowned, intrigued. "And what word would that be?" "No," Daniel replied without hesitation. "Just no." At first, Michelle laughed nervously, thinking he was joking. But when she saw the seriousness in his eyes, her expression changed. She considered the idea, weighing its risks and potential rewards. Finally, she sighed. "It's risky, Daniel, extremely risky. But maybe it's exactly what we need. Sometimes simplicity carries more weight than complexity." Over the next few hours, Daniel and Michelle worked together to convince the other delegates of their plan. It wasn't easy. Many argued that responding with a single word was reckless and arrogant. Others believed it wouldn't make a difference. The Council would destroy Earth regardless. Yet there was something undeniably compelling about the idea. It was bold, unyielding, and uniquely human. Eventually, after much debate, the decision was made. Humanity would reply with one word: no. The message was sent through every available frequency, broadcast directly to the Council's ship. As the signal traveled into space, the entire world waited anxiously for a response. Would the Council strike back? Or would they reconsider their stance? For now, there was only silence. The tension aboard the Solstice was reaching a breaking point. Days had turned into weeks, and still, no one could figure out how to fully understand or control the ancient machine buried beneath the moon's surface. Every attempt to locate the failsafe mentioned in the Sentinel inscriptions had failed, leaving the crew frustrated and increasingly anxious. The Krill hadn't returned yet, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time before they did. Commander Alex Carter stood on the bridge, staring at the holographic map of the Epsilon sector displayed above the central console. His eyes traced the borders of human space, imagining the invisible line that separated safety from chaos. The machine was a guardian, yes, but it was also a wild card. If the Krill pushed too far, the machine might awaken again. And this time, there was no guarantee it would stop at just disabling enemy ships. Lieutenant Rachel Monroe approached him quietly, her expression grim. "Sir," she began, "we've received reports of increased activity near the border. It looks like the Krill are preparing for another incursion." Alex didn't respond immediately. He already knew what this meant. The Krill were relentless. They wouldn't back down after their last defeat. Instead, they'd come back stronger, with more ships and better tactics. And when they did, humanity would have no choice but to rely on the unpredictable power of the ancient machine. "Send patrols to reinforce the outer perimeter," Alex instructed finally, his voice firm despite the unease gnawing at him. "And make sure Dr. Dawson has everything she needs to keep studying those ruins. We're running out of time." Rachel nodded and relayed the orders, though her face betrayed her worry. She trusted Alex, but even she couldn't deny the growing sense of dread that hung over the ship. The machine was their best chance at stopping the Krill, but it was also their greatest unknown. Back on the moon, Dr. Emily Dawson worked tirelessly alongside Captain Daniel Brooks and the rest of the team. They had set up temporary shelters near the ruins, using portable equipment to continue their research. Despite Dawson's earlier breakthroughs, progress remained slow. The symbols etched into the structures hinted at secrets, but deciphering them required patience and precision, two things that were in short supply given the looming threat. "We're missing something," Dawson muttered one evening as she sat cross-legged on the ground, surrounded by notes and sketches. Her voice carried a mix of frustration and determination. "There has to be a pattern here, something we haven't noticed yet." Daniel crouched beside her, handing her a fresh cup of coffee. "You'll figure it out," he said confidently. "You always do." She managed a weak smile, grateful for his support. But deep down, she knew the stakes were higher than ever. If they couldn't find a way to communicate with the machine, or at least predict its behavior, they risked unleashing forces they couldn't control. And if that happened, it wouldn't just be the Krill who suffered. Humanity might pay the ultimate price. As if on cue, the ground trembled slightly beneath them. Both Dawson and Daniel froze, exchanging nervous glances. Over the past few days, these tremors had become more frequent, as though the machine was responding to their presence, or perhaps sensing the approaching danger. "It's waking up," Dawson whispered, her voice barely audible. Before either of them could say more, alarms blared across the camp. One of the engineers ran up to them, breathless. "Dr. Dawson, Captain Brooks, you need to see this." They followed him to the edge of the ruins, where a group of scientists and engineers had gathered around a newly uncovered section of the structure. Embedded in the rock was a panel unlike anything they had seen before, a series of glowing symbols arranged in a circular pattern. It hummed faintly, pulsing with energy. "This wasn't here yesterday," one of the engineers exclaimed, pointing to the panel. Dawson stepped forward, her heart racing. This was it, the control mechanism they had been searching for. She examined the symbols carefully, recognizing some of them from her earlier translations. "This is it," she said, turning to Daniel. "This is how we interface with the machine." "But how does it work?" Daniel asked, eyeing the panel warily. "We don't want to accidentally trigger it." Dawson hesitated. He was right. Tampering with the panel without understanding its function could have disastrous consequences. Still, they couldn't afford to wait. If the krill arrived while the machine was still dormant, humanity would be defenseless. "I think I can activate it safely," Dawson said finally, her voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside her. "But I'll need help." Daniel nodded. "What do you need?" With the team's assistance, Dawson began inputting sequences based on the patterns she had decoded from the ruins. Each symbol lit up as she pressed it, creating a ripple effect across the panel. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the air like a low-frequency pulse. For several tense minutes, nothing seemed to happen. Then the ground shook violently, throwing everyone off balance. From the largest structure emerged the machine once again, towering above them like a colossus. Its glowing lines pulsed brighter than ever, casting an eerie blue light over the landscape. Unlike before, however, it didn't retreat. Instead, it moved closer, stopping just a few meters away. "What's it doing?" Daniel demanded, raising his weapon instinctively. "Don't shoot!" Dawson shouted, holding up a hand. "It's not attacking us!" Sure enough, the machine remained motionless, its presence both awe-inspiring and terrifying. After a moment, a beam of light shot out from its center, scanning the team much like it had during their first encounter. But this time, the beam lingered longer, as though analyzing them more thoroughly. Then, without warning, the machine sank back into the ground, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. The tremors subsided, and silence returned to the moon. Everyone stared at the spot where the machine had vanished, stunned and confused. "What just happened?" one of the engineers asked, breaking the silence. "I think—" Dawson began slowly, her voice trembling with excitement. "I think we established a connection. The machine recognized us. Or at least, it acknowledged our presence." Daniel frowned. "Does that mean we can control it now?" Dawson shook her head. "Not exactly, but it's a start. We've opened a line of communication. Now we just need to figure out how to use it." Meanwhile, aboard the Solstice, Alex and Rachel received updates from the team on the moon. While relieved to hear that the machine hadn't attacked, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that they were playing with fire. Communicating with the machine was one thing, controlling it was another entirely. "We need to test it," Alex said finally, addressing Rachel and the senior staff. "If the krill come back, we can't afford any surprises. We need to know what the machine is capable of and whether it will protect us or turn against us." Rachel hesitated. "Are you sure that's wise? What if activating it draws attention from other species, or worse, causes collateral damage?" Alex clenched his fists. "We don't have a choice. If we wait until the krill arrive, it'll be too late." Against protocol, Alex authorized a controlled activation sequence. Back on the moon, Dawson and her team prepared to trigger the machine under strict supervision. Using the panel they had discovered, they initiated a low-level activation, hoping to gauge the machine's response. At first, nothing happened. Then the ground trembled violently as the machine erupted from beneath the surface, its form sleek and imposing. This time, however, it didn't stop. It launched itself into the sky, moving faster than anything the team had ever seen. Within seconds, it vanished into the distance, leaving behind a trail of shimmering energy. Moments later, reports flooded in from nearby patrol ships. A massive krill fleet had entered human space, heading straight for the Epsilon sector. Machine intercepted them almost instantly, unleashing a devastating wave of energy that obliterated the entire fleet. Ships disintegrated in flashes of light, their crews wiped out in an instant. When the dust settled, the machine returned to the moon, sinking back into the ground as though nothing had happened. The team watched in stunned silence, their minds struggling to process what they had just witnessed. On the solstice, Alex and Rachel listened to the aftermath reports with mixed emotions. The machine had saved them, but at what cost? Its power was undeniable, but so was its unpredictability. "We've unleashed something we don't fully understand," Rachel said softly, voicing what everyone was thinking. Alex nodded, his expression somber. "Yes, but for now it's bought us some time. We'll need to figure out how to coexist with it, or find a way to shut it down completely." For the first time in weeks, the crew allowed themselves a moment of relief. The krill threat had been neutralized, for now. But as Alex gazed out at the stars, he couldn't help but wonder, what other secrets lay hidden in the vastness of space, and what price would humanity pay for uncovering them? The destruction of the krill fleet sent shock waves through the galaxy, both literally and figuratively. News of the event spread quickly, carried by subspace transmissions and whispered rumors among starfarers. The ancient machine had proven its power, wiping out an entire armada in seconds. To many, it was a terrifying reminder of how small and insignificant humanity truly was in the grand scheme of the universe. But to others, it was a beacon of hope, a sign that human space was not defenseless. Commander Alex Carter stood on the bridge of the Solstice, staring at the holographic display showing the Epsilon sector. The region was eerily quiet now, devoid of any hostile activity. The krill had been silenced, for now, but Alex knew this was only the beginning. Word would reach other civilizations soon enough, and questions would follow. Who controlled the machine? What were its limits? And most importantly, what would happen if someone else crossed into human space? Lieutenant Rachel Monroe approached him, her face pale but resolute. "Sir," she began, "we've received inquiries from several neighboring species. They want answers." Alex sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. "What did you tell them?" "The truth," Rachel replied, "that we don't fully understand the machine ourselves. We're investigating it, but we can't guarantee anything." Alex nodded slowly. Honesty might not win them allies, but lying would only make things worse. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were sitting on a powder keg. The machine's existence changed everything, not just for humanity, but for the balance of power across the galaxy. Back on the moon where the ruins lay, Dr. Emily Dawson continued her work with renewed urgency. The activation sequence had revealed more about the machine's capabilities, but it had also raised new questions. How far would it go to protect human space? Could it distinguish between friend and foe? And perhaps most troubling of all, could it be turned off? "We need to figure out its programming," Dawson said one evening as she sat with Captain Daniel Brooks near the glowing panel embedded in the rock. Her voice was calm but firm, betraying none of the fear she felt deep inside. "If we can decode its logic, maybe we can establish some kind of control." Daniel frowned, leaning back against the jagged surface of a nearby structure. "You really think that's possible? This thing is ancient. Its creators are long gone." Dawson hesitated before responding. He wasn't wrong. Deciphering the machine's inner workings was like trying to solve a puzzle without knowing the rules. But giving up wasn't an option. "We have to try," she said finally. "If we don't, we risk losing everything." As days passed, the team worked tirelessly, analyzing every scrap of data they could gather. Engineers mapped the energy signatures emitted by the machine during activations, while scientists studied the symbols etched into the ruins for clues. Slowly but surely, patterns began to emerge. The machine wasn't just a weapon, it was a protector, designed to safeguard specific zones marked by the Sentinels. Its behavior was governed by algorithms that evaluated threats based on intent and proximity. "This changes things," Dawson announced one morning, holding up her datapad triumphantly. She had uncovered fragments of code embedded within the symbols, revealing part of the machine's decision-making process. "It doesn't act blindly. It assesses situations before responding." Rachel, who had joined the team temporarily to oversee operations, looked skeptical. "Assessments or not, it still destroyed an entire fleet. That's not exactly reassuring." "True," Dawson admitted, "but it means there's a chance we can communicate with it. If we can prove we're not a threat, maybe we can earn its trust, or at least convince it to stand down when necessary." Encouraged by this discovery, Alex ordered increased efforts to study the machine. At the same time, he reached out to Earth Command, requesting reinforcements and resources. Whatever happened next, humanity needed to be prepared. News of the machine's awakening eventually reached the United Galactic Council, a coalition of species working to maintain peace across the stars. Representatives gathered for an emergency session, demanding explanations from humanity. Some accused humans of deliberately hiding such powerful technology, while others argued that the machine posed a danger to everyone. Alex found himself standing before the council, addressing ambassadors from dozens of worlds. His uniform was crisp, his posture rigid, but his voice betrayed hints of exhaustion. "Humanity didn't create this machine," he explained. "We discovered it buried beneath our territory. Like you, we're still learning about its purpose and capabilities." Murmurs rippled through the chamber as delegates exchanged wary glances. General Laura Hayes, representing Earth, stepped forward to support Alex. "This machine belongs to an ancient civilization known as the Sentinels," she added. "Its presence in human space predates our arrival. We're doing everything we can to understand it and ensure it doesn't harm innocent lives." Despite their assurances, skepticism lingered. One ambassador, a reptilian diplomat named Zorath, spoke up. "What guarantees do we have that your species won't use this machine as a weapon? Power like that cannot remain unchecked." Alex met Zorath's gaze evenly. "We're not asking for permission to keep it. We're sharing what we know because transparency is the only way forward. If we withhold information, fear will drive us apart, and that benefits no one." His words struck a chord with some members of the council, though others remained unconvinced. Diplomatic negotiations dragged on for weeks, with humanity walking, a delicate line between cooperation and self-preservation. In the end, a fragile agreement was reached. The borders of human space would remain protected, but humanity would allow independent observers to monitor the machine's activities. Meanwhile, back on the moon, progress continued. Dawson and her team managed to establish limited communication with the machine, using the panel to send simple queries. Though responses were slow and cryptic, they confirmed one crucial detail. The machine recognized humanity as stewards of the zone it guarded. "It wouldn't harm humans unless provoked. It's not perfect," Dawson admitted during a debriefing session aboard the Solstice. "But it's progress. As long as we respect its boundaries, it seems willing to tolerate us." Alex nodded, thoughtfully. "Then we'll make sure those boundaries are clear, to everyone." Over the following months, humanity adapted to its new reality. Patrols along the borders of human space became routine, ensuring compliance with the Council's agreement. Scientists and engineers collaborated with alien experts to study the machine further, hoping to unlock more of its secrets. And while tensions remained high, a cautious peace settled over the galaxy. For Alex, the experience had been humbling. Humanity had always prided itself on its ingenuity and resilience, but the discovery of the machine reminded him how much they still had to learn. Out there, among the stars, mysteries waited, ancient forces capable of shaping destinies. One evening, as Alex stood on the observation deck of the Solstice, gazing out at the endless expanse of space, Rachel joined him silently. For a moment, neither of them spoke, content to let the silence stretch between them. "What happens next?" Rachel asked finally, breaking the quiet. Alex shrugged slightly. "We keep going. We explore, we adapt, and we survive. That's what humanity does best." Rachel smiled faintly, her eyes reflecting the distant glow of the stars. "And if another machine wakes up somewhere else?" "Then we deal with it," Alex replied simply. "One step at a time." As the Solstice drifted through the void, its crew carried the weight of their discoveries with quiet determination. They had faced the unknown and emerged stronger, but they also knew the journey was far from over. Somewhere out there, beyond the borders of human space, other secrets lay hidden waiting to be uncovered. And when they were, humanity would be ready. For now, though, the legend of the Guardian machine endured, a testament to the resilience and ingenuity of those who called human space home. It was both a shield and a reminder. The universe was vast, mysterious, and full of wonders and dangers that no one could ever fully comprehend. The aftermath of the Krill's defeat brought a strange calm to human space, but it was the kind of calm that came before a storm. The machine's power had been demonstrated, and while it served as a deterrent to potential invaders, it also sparked curiosity and fear among neighboring species. Humanity found itself at the center of attention, scrutinized by allies and enemies alike. Commander Alex Carter sat in his quarters aboard the Solstice, staring at a blank screen on his desk. He hadn't slept much since the council meeting. The weight of responsibility pressed heavily on him. Humanity had survived the Krill incursion, but now they faced a new challenge, navigating the delicate balance between transparency and secrecy. Sharing information about the machine with other species was necessary, but it also meant exposing their vulnerabilities. A soft knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. Lieutenant Rachel Monroe entered, holding a datapad. Her expression was serious, though there was a hint of concern in her eyes. "Sir," she began, "we've received another transmission from Earth Command." Alex gestured for her to sit. "What is it this time?" Rachel handed him the datapad. "It's about the observers. They're sending a delegation to study the machine up close." Alex frowned. The agreement with the Galactic Council included provisions for independent oversight, but he hadn't expected them to move so quickly. "Who's coming?" he asked, scrolling through the message. "A team led by Ambassador Zorath," Rachel replied. "He requested direct access to the ruins." Alex let out a heavy sigh. Zorath was one of the most vocal critics of humanity during the council session. His presence would complicate matters further. Still, there was no avoiding it. If they wanted to maintain trust, they had to cooperate. "Prepare the shuttle," Alex instructed. "I'll accompany the team personally." On the moon, where the ancient ruins lay, Dr. Emily Dawson greeted the delegation with mixed feelings. She respected Zorath's intelligence. He was known for his diplomatic skills, but she didn't trust his motives. As the ambassador stepped off the shuttle, flanked by a group of scientists and security personnel, Dawson forced a polite smile. "Welcome," she said, extending a hand. "I'm Dr. Dawson. I'll be guiding you through our findings." Zorath nodded curtly, his reptilian features unreadable. "Thank you, Doctor." Let's begin. The tour started with an overview of the ruins. Dawson explained the significance of the symbols etched into the structures and how they related to the machine's programming. Zorath listened intently, asking pointed questions that revealed both his knowledge and skepticism. "This technology is beyond anything we've encountered," Zorath remarked, running a clawed finger along one of the glowing symbols. "How can you be certain it won't turn against you?" Dawson hesitated. It was a question she had asked herself countless times. "We've established limited communication with the machine," she explained. "So far, it has shown no hostility toward humans, but we're still learning." Zorath raised an eyebrow. "Limited communication? That doesn't sound very reassuring." Before Dawson could respond, the ground trembled slightly. Everyone froze, exchanging nervous glances. Moments later, the machine emerged from beneath the surface, its towering form casting a shadow over the group. Its glowing lines pulsed rhythmically, as if acknowledging their presence. One of Zorath's aides gasped, taking a step back. "Is it alive?" "No," Dawson replied quickly. "It's reacting to us. This happens whenever someone approaches the ruins." Zorath studied the machine closely, his sharp eyes scanning its sleek surface. "Fascinating," he murmured. "And you say it destroyed an entire fleet without hesitation?" "Yes," Dawson admitted. "But only because the krill crossed into human space uninvited. The machine seems designed to protect this zone." Zorath turned to her, his tone sharp. "And what constitutes uninvited? Who decides which species are welcome here?" "That's part of what we're trying to understand," Dawson said carefully. "For now, we're working to ensure it doesn't act prematurely." The ambassador fell silent, clearly unsatisfied with her answer. After a few more minutes of observation, he signaled for his team to return to the shuttle. As they prepared to leave, Zorath addressed Alex, who had accompanied the group. "Commander," he began, his voice low but firm, "this machine poses a threat, not just to your species, but to the entire galaxy. You must tread carefully." Alex met his gaze evenly. "We understand the risks, Ambassador. Rest assured, we're doing everything in our power to manage them." Zorath nodded, though his expression remained skeptical. "See that you do. The Council will be watching." Back aboard the Solstice, the crew discussed the implications of Zorath's visit. While his concerns were valid, they couldn't afford to second-guess every decision. Humanity needed stability, and the machine was their best chance at achieving it. "We need to focus on strengthening our defenses," Rachel suggested during a meeting with Alex and the senior staff. "If another species decides to test the machine, we should be ready." Alex agreed. "Agreed. Increase patrols along the borders and reinforce key sectors. We can't rely solely on the machine." Dr. Dawson, who had joined the discussion via hologram, chimed in. "There's something else we need to consider. The machine isn't the only guardian out there. The Sentinels likely placed others throughout the galaxy. What happens if one of those wakes up elsewhere?" The room fell silent as everyone absorbed her words. The thought of multiple machines operating independently was daunting. If even one malfunctioned or acted outside its intended purpose, the consequences could be catastrophic. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it," Alex said finally. "For now, our priority is protecting human space." Weeks passed, and life aboard the Solstice settled into a routine. Patrols continued, tensions eased slightly, and research on the machine progressed steadily. But peace never lasts forever. One evening, alarms blared across the ship, jolting everyone awake. Alex rushed to the bridge, where Rachel was already, coordinating efforts. "Report!" he barked. "It's the krill," Rachel replied, her voice tense. "Another fleet has entered human space." Alex clenched his fists. So much for deterrence. "Position?" "They're heading straight for the Epsilon sector," Rachel said, pointing to the holographic display. They're moving faster than last time. Alex's mind raced. The machine had wiped out the previous fleet effortlessly, but relying on it again felt like gambling with fate. "Activate the machine," he ordered reluctantly. "Let's see if it reacts." Moments later, reports flooded in. The machine intercepted the Krill fleet once again, unleashing a devastating wave of energy that obliterated the intruders. But this time, something was different. Instead of retreating immediately, the machine lingered, its glowing lines pulsing erratically. "What's happening?" Alex demanded, staring at the live feed from the moon. "I don't know," Dawson replied, her voice trembling. "This isn't normal behavior." Suddenly, the machine launched itself into space, moving away from the ruins at incredible speed. It disappeared into the distance, leaving behind a trail of shimmering energy. "Where's it going?" Rachel asked, her face pale. No one had an answer. Hours later, news arrived from deep space monitoring stations. A massive anomaly had appeared near the edge of human space, a swirling vortex of energy unlike anything ever recorded. And at its center stood the machine, seemingly dormant but radiating immense power. Alex stared at the images, his heart sinking. Whatever the machine was doing, it wasn't under their control anymore. For the first time in months, he felt truly powerless. "What do we do now?" Rachel asked softly. Alex took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. "We wait," he said finally, "and we prepare for whatever comes next." As the stars twinkled silently outside the viewport, the crew of the Solstice braced themselves for the unknown. The machine had protected them, but it had also reminded them of one undeniable truth. The universe was vast, unpredictable, and full of forces far greater than humanity could comprehend. For now, all they could do was stand guard and hope that when the next chapter began, they would be ready. The discovery of the ancient ruins and the mysterious machine sent ripples through the ranks of the Solstice. Everyone aboard the ship felt the weight of what they had uncovered. It wasn't just a relic from an old civilization. It was something far more significant. A guardian, as Dr. Emily Dawson had called it. But guardians protected something, and that meant there was more to this story than anyone could yet understand. Commander Alex Carter paced back and forth in the briefing room, his mind racing. The holographic display in the center of the table showed the moon where the ruins were found, along with detailed scans of the machine. Lieutenant Rachel Monroe sat quietly at the table, her eyes fixed on the data scrolling across the screen. She didn't say much, but Alex could tell she was thinking hard about their next move. "We can't leave this alone," Alex said finally, breaking the silence. "If the Krill find out about this, they'll come back, and they won't stop until they've taken whatever's down there." Rachel nodded slowly. "But we don't even know what it is yet. For all we know, waking up that machine could be worse than letting the Krill have it." Alex stopped pacing and looked at her. "Do you really believe that? We saw how powerful that thing is. If it's protecting something, then it's doing its job for a reason." Rachel hesitated. She wanted to argue, but deep down, she knew Alex was right. The Krill weren't explorers or diplomats. They were conquerors. If they got their hands on ancient technology like this, they wouldn't hesitate to use it against humanity. Still, the thought of meddling with forces they didn't fully understand made her uneasy. Dr. Dawson entered the room just then, carrying a datapad filled with notes. Her face was flushed with excitement, though traces of worry lingered in her eyes. "I've been studying the symbols," she said, sitting down at the table. "They're not just random markings. They tell a story." Everyone leaned in closer, eager to hear what she had discovered. Dawson tapped the screen of her datapad, projecting images of the symbols onto the wall. "These ruins belong to a race called the Sentinels," she explained. "From what I can gather, they were an advanced civilization that existed long before humans or the Krill ever set foot in the stars. Why haven't we heard of them before? Rachel asked. They disappeared, Dawson replied. Their empire collapsed thousands of years ago, but before they vanished, they left behind these guardians, machines designed to protect certain areas of space from hostile forces. Alex frowned. So this whole region, human space, is one of those protected zones? Dawson nodded. Exactly. The Sentinels must have seeded these machines throughout the galaxy, marking territories they deemed important. Whoever crosses into those zones risks awakening the Guardians. Captain Daniel Brooks spoke up then, his voice steady but serious. And now the Krill are poking around. If they keep pushing deeper, they might trigger the machine again. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. Humanity had unknowingly built its empire within a zone guarded by ancient technology. For decades, the warnings, broadcasted from Earth's relay stations, had kept others away, but now, with the Krill growing bolder, the fragile peace was beginning to unravel. We need to figure out how to control the machine, Alex said after a moment. If we can't, we're sitting ducks. Dawson shook her head. It's not that simple. This kind of technology is beyond us. Even if we could interface with it, we'd risk making things worse. What about using it as a weapon? Daniel suggested. If it's strong enough to scare off the Krill, maybe we can turn it against them. No, Rachel interjected firmly. We don't know what it's capable of. What if activating it destroys everything in the sector, including us? Alex sighed, rubbing his temples. Every option came with risks, and none of them seemed good. Time was running out, though. The Krill wouldn't stay away forever, and when they returned, they'd bring reinforcements. Humanity needed a plan, and fast. Back on the moon, the team worked tirelessly to learn more about the machine. Engineers set up portable scanners around the ruins, while scientists analyzed samples of the strange material the structures were made of. Dawson spent hours deciphering the symbols, piecing together fragments of the Sentinel language. It's like solving a puzzle, she told Daniel one evening as they stood near the largest structure. Each symbol connects to another, forming a bigger picture. Daniel glanced at her, amused. You make it sound easy. She smiled faintly. It's not, but it's fascinating. These people, the Sentinels, they were incredible. Their knowledge of energy and physics is light years ahead of anything we've achieved. As she spoke, the ground beneath them trembled slightly. Both of them froze, exchanging wary glances. The tremor passed quickly, but it served as a reminder that the machine was still active, even if it remained hidden. Later that night, Dawson stayed up late, poring over her notes. She had managed to translate part of the text surrounding the machine. According to the inscriptions, the Guardian was programmed to respond to threats automatically. If an intruder crossed into human space without permission, the machine would awaken and eliminate the threat. However, there was also mention of a fail-safe, a way to deactivate the system, though the exact details were unclear. Excited by the discovery, Dawson rushed to share the news with Alex and the others. When she arrived on the solstice, she found the crew gathered in the command center discussing their next steps. I think I've found something, she announced, holding up her datapad. There's a way to shut down the machine, if we can find the control mechanism. Alex's eyes lit up. Where is it? That's the problem, Dawson admitted. The inscriptions only hint at its location. It could be buried deeper, underground, or it might require a specific sequence of actions to activate. Rachel frowned. So, we're back to square one. Not necessarily, Dawson countered. Even if we can't shut it down completely, understanding how it works gives us an advantage. Maybe we can communicate with it, or at least predict its behavior. Alex considered this for a moment. All right. We'll focus on gathering more intel. In the meantime, I want increased patrols around the Epsilon sector. If the Krill come back, we need to be ready. Over the next few days, the crew worked non-stop, analyzing every piece of data they had collected. Back on the moon, engineers drilled into the ground near the ruins, searching for any sign of the control mechanism. Meanwhile, scouts patrolled the surrounding area, keeping an eye out for enemy ships. Despite their efforts, progress was slow. The machine remained elusive, its true purpose shrouded in mystery. And as the days turned into weeks, tensions aboard the Solstice began to rise. The krill hadn't returned yet, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time. One evening, as Alex stared out the viewport at the endless expanse of stars, he couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. Humanity had always prided itself on exploration and discovery, but now they faced a challenge unlike any other. They had stumbled onto something ancient and powerful, something that could either save them or destroy them. "Sir?" Rachel's voice broke through his thoughts. He turned to see her standing in the doorway, her expression concerned. "Everything okay?" she asked. Alex hesitated before answering. "I don't know, Rachel. We're walking a tightrope here. One wrong move, and we could lose everything." Rachel stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We'll figure it out. We always do." Her words offered little comfort, but Alex appreciated the sentiment. For now, all they could do was prepare, and hope that when the krill returned, they would be ready. Unbeknownst to them, however, the krill weren't the only ones watching. Deep within the ruins, the machine stirred ever so slightly, its glowing lines pulsing faintly in the darkness. It had been dormant for millennia, waiting patiently for its moment to act. Now, with intruders encroaching on its domain, it was beginning to wake up, and nothing would be the same again.